welcome to the Connection Valley Family Ministries podcast. My name is Brooke Marston. I'm here with my co-hosts, Charles Giddens, our CV Kids pastor, and Becca Reese, our CV Littles director. And today we're going to be digging into some of the content from the book, Habits of the Household, that we talked about last time by Justin Whitmel Earley. And we're thrilled to be joined by Andy and Kate Smith today. Yay!
Thanks for having us.
Yay!
Yeah, we are glad to have you. I first met Andy and Kate a number of years ago. I don't even know how many years ago it was exactly. You might know. But my kids were very young back then, and you guys were volunteering in the kids' ministry where they were elementary-age kids. Well, at least my oldest were in elementary. I'm pretty sure that my girls were still preschool age. And Andy, you were a small group leader for my oldest, so it goes way back. But now it's kind of come full circle, and we are able to have your children in our family ministry space. So it's really kind of cool to be kind of on the other side of that. Yeah, so we're glad to have you guys. Crazy how everything changes so fast, and so I don't know. We're really glad to have you guys with us today. So, but before we get into any of the content from the book or any of that, we would love to hear just a little bit more about you guys. So tell us just a little bit about yourselves, about your story, for those who maybe don't know you. Just about you guys, your kids, whatever you want to share. What makes you guys interesting?
I don't know if we'd go that far.
I'm not sure that's the right word for it. But, next month is our 18th anniversary.
Congratulations.
We've been married for 18 years.
Thank you.
Wonderful years. And then 4 years to the day before that anniversary, we started dating. And I highly recommend, fellas, if you can, keep your same anniversary. It's highly beneficial. Just
Keeps it simple.
yeah, keeps it simple for us fellas.
Yeah. We've been parenting for 10 years. Our oldest is 10, and we have 4 amazing sons. And Ray is 10, Gabe 7, Luke 5, and TJ is 8.5 months.
And they're great.
They are.
Thank you.
They're good kids.
And adorable.
They make parenting easy.
We love them. We love spending time with our kids.
We do.
So we like being around them. I don't know. What makes us interesting? We have had the opportunity to spend lots of time getting to know lots of different kids. You did summer camp ministry for 10 summers. I think I was 7. And you were a youth pastor. I've been a teacher. We've both been church volunteers for a really long time. I feel like it was like 15 or 16 years ago we met you.
Probably.
So
It was 2008.
And that wasn't
Okay.
even the start of all of our things. So we've been around other people's kids, watching kids be raised for a long time. So we just sort of sat back and took notes, like, what's going on here? And we go home and quietly be like, what would we do in that situation, you know? And then you have your own kids and the whole thing changes.
And the whole thing gets more complicated.
I love it. I think it's so great. So like we talked about last time, we're going to be digging into discipline, which is super fun. You know, parents
hard.
love to talk about it. It is hard, and parents love to talk about that. You know, so and I would imagine that you guys have plenty of opportunities with 4 boys. You have plenty of opportunities to shape the hearts of these young men, and they are great, so I'm sure they are super easy to parent, but there were so many wonderful takeaways from this chapter, and I love it because it's not a how to make your kids behave kind of book. The concepts on discipline were not about do these 5 steps or make your kids behave in this kind of way. It's really all about discipline being the discipleship of your child, helping your child love to learn the right things rather than controlling behavior. So what were your thoughts when he introduced this idea of discipline really being discipleship? What were some of your thoughts as he introduced that? Did you say, yes, absolutely, or I never really thought about it that way, or?
I've had lots of conversations, especially with our oldest son, about that very thing, about how As he's gotten older, I've talked to him more and more in those hard discipline moments about how this whole thing that we're doing with addressing that thing you did isn't as much about the thing you did as about who you are and what's in your heart and who you're becoming and who you will be when you're older. I remind him frequently that he will still have brothers when they're grown-ups. And wouldn't it be nice to be friends with them and be able to get together on holidays and at, cookouts at our house and get along and not still be angry about this thing that happened right now with that Nerf gun or with
Or that Lego.
or that Lego.
Kate, any thoughts for you?
My thoughts were that discipleship makes me think of what we focus as a family is about the relationship with our kids, with each other, with God. We talk about like building trust. Just we need you to trust us on some things. We need to trust God with things, and just strengthening that relationship. Two things that we have in our own home is just two rules. Andy, it's supposed to be honor your father and mother, but Andy makes it.
Just shorten it. You just short as a dad. You shorten honor thy father and thy mother to honor your mother, and don't tell lies.
And don't tell lies.
And those make two very good rules that cover a lot of things.
But lies break the relationship. And so, and everything else kind of falls under, if you did you honor your mother today? Like, were you, doing all the things that she wanted you to? Everything falls under that, so.
Great. What about you guys? I know we talked about last time, our kids are all a little bit older than you guys' kids. So we cover the range from 8 months to 23 in this group right here. So lots of variance in what parenting looks like, but what did you guys think as you read through that idea of discipline being discipleship?
So for me, I remember hearing other people who parented ahead of me that I watched. Like you were saying, you look at other people, what worked for them, and even if it worked for them, it might not necessarily work for your child because every child's different. But I never really thought of it as discipleship, but I did hear people say a lot of times that you want to get the heart of the child. It's not just about obedience, it's about the heart. And honestly, I don't know that I ever really understood what that meant. It sounded nice, like, oh yeah, I want to get their heart, but how? And so when he started talking about discipline being discipleship, I was like, man, I wish I had this 20 years ago before I had my kid. Because that makes so much sense. It's not just going to get their heart, because that's just so generic. And this book really did give some practical steps on habits to create that discipleship. So very helpful information.
Yeah, I mean, much of the same. I wish I would have had this. My kid's 16. Would have been nice to have that chapter when he was 3, 4, 2, 1, I don't know, any time before now. But, I think it's, what he talking about the heart, he wrote, discipline is not a tool for controlling behavior. It's a process of discipling a child's heart toward the right loves. Mm-hmm. That's so not how I discipline my son. Well, it wasn't up until I read this book, and now I'm trying to change things. But I disciplined, which I'm sure we'll get to in a minute, but discipline very different. So, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I did too, and I thought no truer words had ever been spoken or written, in my opinion, when he talked about how discipline is never convenient. I was like, yes, it's not. Why not? Why do those moments not happen when, you're not in a rush to get out the door, or when, everything else is going smoothly?
When your mother-in-law is not hovering over your shoulder.
Oh my goodness, right. Right? It's never convenient. So lots of problems that happen with discipline because it's not convenient, but it's not about controlling the kid's behavior, even though a lot of times we make it that way because of our instincts. And so he kind of listed at the beginning of that chapter some of those instincts that get in the way of us viewing discipline as discipleship. Were there any that you identified, like, yes, this would be my default if I'm not thinking through the pyramid that he gets to, that we'll talk about in a little bit, if I'm not being very intentional in discipleship, do you guys have a default instinct that gets in the way of disciplining your kids the way that you would really like to?
My notes were the very first one that I read. I've seen myself in that many times, where just feeling like your kid has done something just to get under your skin, or they're doing this on purpose to get my goat. And those are the times where we both get to sit in timeout before we have the conversation and deal with whatever just happened.
Yeah, the book talks about it's not a personal assault. It's like sin. And I think that's 100% true. And both of you being flesh, it's just, you're taking it badly. Both of you are, so.
What about you, Kate? Did you have is it the same one, or for you, is there a different instinct that comes into play more often?
For me, I saw myself, I really identified with the one about being frustrated, exhausted, and behaviors being inconvenient. So I kind of combined two towards the end there. And I feel like a lot of moms can identify with that. Like, you're busy, you're tired, things are happening when it's not convenient. As you had said. And so I feel like it would be really easy to push things off till, like, wait till your dad gets home. Wait till later when it's not so inconvenient. And our oldest was very strong-willed, and he would have tantrums to start the day. And I remember when he was little, I would like have this pit in my stomach before he'd even wake up. Like just about the time he'd wake up, and I'd be like, man, I love this kid. I want to spend time with him, but man, it's about to be a battle. And just working through that, finding a way to communicate better, to figure out what he wanted, and being like, oh, you want this bear? Finding what was really important to, you want to bring a bear with you where we're going? Let's bring the bear in the car, or whatever. But trying to work on building that trust, and then being consistent with the things that, like, no, you really cannot. Whatever it was that you just cannot. You can't ride the stairs down on your face, that's just not.
Yeah.
But he was the one that we found being consistent with timeout. We found that, some people have a timeout chair. We found that timeout can literally be anywhere. The floor is everywhere, including the store or the park or anywhere. So we were like, sit down and timeout. The others, it was different, but with him, he just learned how to just sit right down. And I was like, okay.
That's great. That's great. What about you guys? Instincts that popped up for you?
I think for me, the one that stuck out the most was being embarrassed, and trying to manage my reputation as a parent. I grew up caring for kids, working in a daycare, taking care of nieces, nephews, babysitting. So I had a very high standard of what I thought my children were going to be like and how they were going to act, and I was going to make it happen. So I had to learn very quickly that it wasn't about me, and that was a hard thing for me. I was raised in a household where you did it because I said so. And I remember when my daughter, the oldest one, was probably 2, maybe 3, my dad actually said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. He said, you're being too hard on her. And I was like, what? My dad is saying I'm being too hard on a kid? And it was his humanness of realizing that he had higher expectations of us as kids than we needed to have. He expected a certain, and so he wanted me to learn from, just like we're learning from this book, saying we wish we had it before. So passing the wisdom down to other people. And he was sick, you'll regret it if you don't let up a little bit. And so that was the first time that I really realized, okay, it's okay to let her be a kid, and it's not about me. So.
Yeah, I pretty much all of them. Really, at some point, I've probably had every single one of those moments pop up, whether it's embarrassment or I want him to feel pain or why he's doing it on purpose, and of course now he's 16, he does things on purpose now, like he does. I know when he was little, he really wasn't probably doing things on purpose. Now I look at him and I'm like, you did that on purpose, and you did it on purpose. and it's kind of funny, but it's not funny. But I think all of them, I could go on about all the instincts, but I think at some point I've hit all of them.
Yeah. I could definitely identify with the being tired and exhausted and just shoving it off. But I think if I'm in public, and especially when my kids were young, well, sometimes now it's still, I'll just edit myself at that moment. Being embarrassed is the default instinct in public. Because sometimes they say things, sometimes they do things, and it's just like, oh my gosh, no, we need to stop this right now. Stop it. So definitely, but I definitely can identify with that being exhausted feeling. So I'm glad we have things in common.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're not all just, out there by ourselves. That's a great thing about having conversations about any topic, really, about parenting, was we're not in it by ourselves. And really, for me, the gut punch in that chapter was when we see our children as problems to manage instead of image bearers to be discipled, we end up making moments of discipline about our convenience instead of their discipleship. And I was like, way to bottom line it, Yeah. And I'm really glad he didn't stop the chapter there, because that would have been really sad for me.
That would have been a rough spot to leave.
Right. Yeah. You're all sinners. There is no hope, And so thankfully that is not the case. But he goes on and he introduces that pyramid of discipleship. I'm going to just list the parts of the pyramid, because what we want people to read the book. So we want you guys to be reading the book, getting all of the information, not just our Cliff Notes version, but so I'm going to list those parts of the pyramid, the habits that he lists out, and then we'll talk about some. I would like to talk about some of those. First was establish loving authority. Pause for a moment. Pray and talk to yourself. Use body language and space more than words and threats. Be relentless in seeking understanding. Think carefully about consequences. Insist on apologies as confession. And lastly, always end in reconciliation. So when you read through kind of the explanation of each one of these habits, did you guys see ones that you do really well? And I would love to hear about what you do well.
I don't know that I would say ones that I do well, but ones that I have had lots of opportunity to practice, maybe.
You do.
I like
very
that.
well.
The first one I wrote down was establishing loving authority. And that, it really, from the very beginning, any type of discipline is so much easier when you have a great relationship in the first place. One of the things that we talked about before we had kids, and kind of one of the principles that we decided to carry into parenting with us, was just this whole concept of, like in a management class, you learn about the crap sandwich. Like if you're going to give somebody negative feedback, you lead with something positive, and then you put in and then you follow it all up and make a nice, pretty sandwich for them to eat. And there's some validity to that, where like it takes a lot of positive to overcome and overwhelm the negative interactions we have with people. And getting a dad lecture, or being put in timeout, or being told you can't do something awesome that you really want to do, it's hard and it's negative, and but with lots of love and lots of positive everything, it makes those hard moments easier, and it just kind of sets the whole thing up for success. And I decided when the boys were really young, I wanted them to have zero doubt in their mind how much I love them. So I would say I love them a lot, and not just once, but like, hey, I love you. Okay. No, I love you. And it just, make it weird. Sometimes as a parent, that's your job, to make it weird. And, sometimes when they're having a bad day, I'll like scoop them up and plant 100 kisses on their cheek, and they'll just say they hate it, but they laugh and giggle, and we have a good time. So.
And he doesn't mean like, a couple, 99, 100. He means he counts to 100 and kisses them 100 times.
I go fast. I count fast.
Really fast, yeah, really
It's like
fast.
a
Kind of thing.
That's gonna look weird on YouTube.
That'll look special. Yeah, there you go. That's good. That's good.
And then I also wrote notes about apologies. And he talks about having household liturgy in the book, and making routines and things that you do and things that repeat. So we, without even realizing it, we have an apology liturgy, and it's always try to get them to look in each other's eyes or in yours eyes, and sometimes they're still mad and they don't want to. But it's, Mommy, I'm sorry for setting the rug on fire. Do you please forgive me? Or, whatever it is that they did. So it's, but it's, addressing the person, looking in their eyes, admitting what you did. I'm sorry for, and then will you please forgive me? And that kind of brings that reconciliation into it a little bit. And so that's something that we've done for a good long while. But as I was reading this chapter, sorry, this is the next question. I'm jumping ahead.
That's okay.
You're going to edit this, right?
That's okay. No.
Okay, we'll edit that because I jumped ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll come back.
Okay, yeah, we'll go back to that.
Yeah. So, Kate, what did you think? Where are you like? Yes, this is my sweet spot.
Well,
I nailed this one.
I think we both do a good job of establishing a loving authority. I think you really do a great job of that, and a lot of the times they spend a lot of time with me, but sometimes I'm like, please go get a hug from your daddy. Like,
And I remind them of my number one rule: honor your mother.
That's right. And so a lot of the time with the apologies, we're looking for that reconciliation. We're looking for a heart change. If they're in timeout, we're looking for that heart change. Sorry, is not going to cut it. It's just not enough. And so we're looking for them to mean it, and once they have a heart change, if they're sitting in timeout, a lot of the time the rest of the timeout, because we've always done like how many minutes for their age is how long timeout is. And so, and it can get lengthy if they're, 5 and they don't want to sit there for 5 minutes. If they would have a heart change, be obedient, sit and seemingly become, sorry for the whole thing rather than still being like, I really am wanting my way. And it's different with each son has got his own set of wills and things. It's very different. But once they do, it's like, if you're upset, we can hold you the remainder of your time out. You might serve the rest of it on daddy's lap or something. When they're done, sometimes we pray for the yuckies in your heart. Sometimes we talk about that we call it yuckies, but it's sin. We're talking about, praying that out as well. And what's difficult is learning to apologize to them when you mess up, and opportunities for that. And you really have to swallow your pride as an adult. Jumping ahead, no, I won't jump ahead. Sorry.
I like it.
We all
You guys are
just
like
wanna
ready
jump
We
to
want to
jump.
do the rest of it too.
I
All
like
right.
it.
Yeah.
I like it. Any thoughts from you guys? I don't want to leave y'all out. Charles Snow.
Just, nope, none of them good at none of them.
Snow.
I liked how you said you had lots of opportunity to practice some of them, even if you weren't good at them. I love that. For me, I think the being relentless and seeking understanding is something that I ask a lot of questions, and I tend to want to understand things anyway. So of course, when it has come to my kids, I want to understand, why did you do this? What were you thinking? But not in a, what were you thinking sort of way, but literally, I want to know, what were you thinking when you decided to lie to me? You know you're going to get caught. So what in your brain process caused you to do that? And I think that drives my kids crazy sometimes when I keep asking questions, and they don't want to think about it because they get embarrassed, especially my youngest. He gets angry. I can see him start getting angry when I'm asking these questions because he starts realizing I really didn't think about it. He's 15, so he's at that age where he's starting to think, I know everything. And so when I point out to him, you didn't think about this before you made the choice, he gets embarrassed that he didn't know or he made a wrong choice. So that one stuck out to me. And then the reconciliation is another one that I've always tried to really do with my kids. I don't always nail it. I've gotten better as I've gotten older. Can have like a semi-adult conversations with them about things. I love what you said about praying the yuckies. Was that what you called it?
Yeah.
The yuckies. We had angries at our house
That's funny.
when our kids were younger. We had to pray for the angries. So there were times that we both had to pray our angries away, not just the child, but also the parent. And so we talked about that and having the reconciliation of apologizing to your kid. Like you were saying, it's hard, and the older they get, the harder it gets to apologize to them because you know they're going to remember it. I mean, not that long ago, I went to my son, again, he's 15. I said, I owe you an apology. And he was like, for what? I said, I told you you were making me angry. You didn't make me angry. I allowed your actions to make me angry, so it was eye-opening to step back and go, wow, I can't blame him for what I'm feeling. So that brought a reconciliation between us. He really appreciated that I didn't put that particular blame on him, on top of what he had already made a bad choice about. So
Yeah.
those were the two that, I wouldn't say we've nailed them, but I'd like to think we've done it a few times.
The praying and talking to yourself thing for me, I think there's lots of talking to myself, and even when they were younger, pretty
So-
good at talking to myself.
I have a question. Does Dear Lord help me? Is that
I
talking
think
and
so.
praying to-
Yes,
okay.
that's the start
I've
of-
nailed that one. I have nailed the Dear Lord help me.
That's the start of it. I mean, I think it does have to go a little bit further than that, but yeah, it's definitely the start. I would say as the kids have gotten older that being relentless about understanding, it really is important. We went through an experience not that long ago with our youngest. She just was, there were several behaviors that were problematic. She wasn't hurting herself, but there were things that she was supposed to be doing, responsibilities she was supposed to be taking care of, she was not following through, and it's our job to help her be a person of her word and all of those things. And so we just sat down one day and I told Brian, I was like, I think we need to find out, like, what is going on. It's not about the laundry. It's not about, that's the surface thing. What is going on? And when we sat down and had the conversation and tears were streaming down, I thought, oh wow, like, that's right, we did the right thing. Like, we had this moment. It was you talk about having that reconciliation and that heart and that trusting relationship. We had a wonderful conversation that I think moved us in a much better direction. It was way better than, I'm taking your keys, I'm taking your phone, kind of thing. We needed to have a conversation, which wouldn't have happened if we had not said, what's really going on? So, yay, it doesn't stop, right? All right, so go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, it doesn't stop.
No.
We haven't reached there at 10
We're
years
not-
old. We're not done.
Oh, we're not there
Sorry.
yet? How much longer?
Does it ever end?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't tell you. So what's challenging for you in that? In those habits? Do you have a habit that maybe you haven't had as much opportunity to practice, or those instincts get in the way?
So with our apology liturgy of the ending in will you please forgive me, I had noticed myself letting, especially my two oldest, when they are just doing something with each other, getting to the point of they're just the sarcastic, I'm sorry for, do you please forgive me, and just being tired and saying, go away. They were doing that while I was reading this chapter.
Oh,
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, very fun. And I can't even remember now what they were fighting over, but there was something that one of them thought was theirs and had to have from the other one, and they just were provoking the snot out of each other. So I got to the part about the brother hug, and I closed the book, and I said, oh boys, come here, we're doing something new starting this minute. And so I called them into my office, and I explained what I had just read with the brother hug, and we are adding that right now. So I made them apologize to each other, And then I said, and you're going to hug until you both laugh, smile, or otherwise get over this moment. And Gabe absolutely loved it. Ray absolutely loved it. Gabe thought it was the worst thing ever. And then I reminded Gabe that in the past, I've made them both wear one of my shirts for like an hour just to be close to each other.
Like a get along
and
shirt.
Gabe absolutely loves that, and Ray thinks it's the worst thing ever. So I said, if you would like, we can put the shirt on you while you're doing the brother hug. And you can both be both happy and miserable simultaneously. And they got over it, and they both thought it was funny, and it got us through that moment.
The first time we did the T-shirt thing, they came out like a two-headed monster. Like it immediately made them like they were together doing something.
The first time we did the T-shirt thing, I told them to go to the bathroom first, and one of them chose not to because he knew that would be a lot of fun to try to do in the shirt together. It's fun. It is fun to parent boys. I love it.
Yes, it's always an adventure.
Girls would scare me. Yes, big props to those of you who do that.
Right. I feel like what's more challenging for me is insisting on apologies as confession. For myself personally, which sounds kind of like what we're talking about, but it's a little different. I was raised with parents that never apologized to me for anything that I can recall. It was just they were the authority and they did it the best they could, and that's you're the kid and good luck, And so, and then we all turned out okay, but it was not as good. Not as I'm not as good. I haven't had practice at apologizing, and I haven't seen it practiced to me either. So I'm very careful to live in a way that I don't have to apologize to other people. I'm just like, maybe I just won't have to. And then you have children, and you say things you don't mean, and they catch you in that moment, and they seemingly push your buttons. And it's been hard for me to really learn how to take that step, but it's been really rewarding. Like, it's really been good to learn how to, I'm sorry for, and being the bigger person and being like, and you can hear the Holy Spirit being like, you really need to apologize for this. And you're like, yeah, but I don't want to. Mm-hmm. But you need to. Mm-hmm. It's good. And it really does bring the relationship closer. I was thinking that about you and your son. That's good. Really good.
Thoughts from you too?
Oh, I do all this great. I mean, no. Thinking carefully about consequences for me is the struggle. If you ask my wife, that's the biggest struggle that I have. So I'm quick to jump to this is what's going to happen. And then generally after a night's sleep, I wake up the next morning and go, that's really not a very good punishment. That was not going to work very well. And then I have to pull back said punishment, and that obviously screws a lot of things up for him, for me, and for my wife, all three of us. So that one, I've been working on it. I've also, we have a counselor now. The counselor that's one of the first things that we talked about in counseling. It's like, hey, you need to get this under control. So I'm working still on consequences thinking, because I'm real quick to say, okay, give me your phone, give me your computer. Like, and he's 16, but doesn't have his license yet. So we're still waiting on that. So I can't take the car yet, but I can, and I have, like, you're not driving today, which.
As soon as you get your license, you're not going to drive for a month.
Right. That's right. You're grounded when you get your license. Yeah, so that was really hard for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, there were two that really stuck out that I struggled with. The pause for a moment, especially when the kids were younger. I really struggled with that to the point where if I needed to pause, it wasn't a healthy pause. It was you need to go to your room right now before I hurt you or say something that I regret. Like, it wasn't a healthy, good pause. So that's definitely something that's been a struggle for me. Probably, I would say more so in those younger years, because they tend to stay in the rooms a little more at this age, so they're not right in my face like they were when they were little. But the other one was definitely consequences, like Charles was saying. An inconsistency of consequences has always been an issue in our household. Inconsistencies between how I would want to discipline versus how I would want my husband to discipline. And I told him before we ever got married, I said, disciplining our kids is probably going to be the hardest issue for our marriage. I just knew that we were going to be on different pages. Again, I was the authority. I knew how to handle kids. He had never been around kids, and he wasn't going to do it right, you know. So I just kind of came into parenthood with that wrong idea of partnership as parents. We didn't really, I love the way you guys talk, you know, hearing you guys say that you've had discussions about how you wanted to parent with certain rules for the household. You know, we never really did that. So I hate that we didn't, but one of the things in the book that really got me was when you're inconsistent with the punishments. So like maybe at home you're really strict, but then when you're in public you're like, oh sweetie, don't do that. And it said when you do that, they've already smelled the blood in the water, and that you've shown your cards of inconsistency. And that is so true. Our kids have played that inconsistency. They know, you know, honestly, my husband has ADHD, so I understand that his brain works very differently than mine does, but there's been a lot of times where we've said there'll be a consequence and then it's forgotten. Not by the kid, but by the adult that's supposed to be, you know.
You got distracted.
Right, get distracted. And our kids have learned, just because they say it's going to be a consequence doesn't mean they're going to stick to it. So that's always been a big struggle in our household for both of us, not just him. I don't have ADHD and I still struggle with it.
I think for me, it's that final step of reconciliation, that making it weird. You know, that final step of, he mentioned it in that consequences, in the consequences piece as well, about forcing into the same space. If someone's been disrespectful, do a chore together so that you're not just off and isolated in your own space, but force that togetherness to help you get to that reconciliation. You know, we will do the apologies and all of that stuff, and then it's just kind of like, okay, now just like, let me be by myself for a little bit. But that doesn't necessarily bring about that closeness, that final step of that reconciliation. So I could see where I'm like, okay, well, we're doing something new at our house too, and I don't know if you can make your 20-year-old children do brother hugs, but you know, we're at least taking that reconciliation to another level. I think it's important, even with us and our children, not even necessarily just between them. Any other thoughts as you reflect on the things in this chapter? You reflect on your circumstances. Anything else that you just really want to share about what you read or the conversations you've had?
This stuff's so hard. It is the hardest part of being a parent. Loving your kids well and not letting them turn into monsters. And when it gets hard, you just try a different way or keep going and don't give up, because at the end of the day, they're worth it. And when things blow up, I will remind them that they're worth going through all of this, and it's a good thing.
You constantly say, what do I say this is the most important part? What do I say this is the most important thing? And you say, it's your heart.
Yeah.
It's your heart. And so if your heart's got all this going on, that's the real problem.
Yeah. Much more so than their behavior.
Right. I feel like just loving them, pushing them to be better, knowing that one day they're going to be, our brother or, or sister in Christ. They're going to be, somebody that, they'll be somebody we can talk to like an equal.
Someday they'll be an adult.
Right, they're going to be an adult. Thank you. I added this and didn't tell you about it, so here you go. One of your favorite verses is Ephesians 4:1. Therefore, I beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling for which you have been called by God. And I feel like that's, as a parent, what you've been called to. And it's not easy. It doesn't come with a manual, but we just keep trying. And I feel like we lean into each other. We take everything that we've learned from everywhere, and we take it back home, and we do what works for us. And when
that doesn't work, we find something else.
That's right. We remind ourselves that you all are part of, we were married 7 years, but you could be married 5 minutes, or whatever. You're part of an already established family. So you can't drive a wedge between this, because we're gonna, be consistent with each other too. And if one of us says no, the answer is no, Don't ask for a different answer or something like that. So we just encourage everybody to, love your kids. That's all we can say.
From an outside perspective, I think you guys do that very well. We shared before the podcast, I shared a story, and I'm not going to share it here because that was for y'all, but I have seen it in action, and I'm so thankful for that, and I hope that other people take the opportunity to get to know the two of you and to watch you, because I think you do a very good job of loving your children. It's obvious that you delight in your children, and I think that's pretty neat. So the fact that they have two parents who love the Lord, love each other, and love them so much, that's the biggest part probably of all of the discipline when it comes back to that. So thank you guys for being that kind of example. Thank you for the wisdom that you shared, for your vulnerability here in these last few minutes. Thank you for letting us see how you are rehearsing, as Justin Earley put it, how you are rehearsing and practicing the narrative of forgiveness and reconciliation in your family. Because it's a story of God in the world, and we get to practice that in our homes. And so thank you for sharing you guys' experience with that. Anything else you guys wanted to add? All right. Well, we thank you for listening and viewing and for joining us today. And we hope that you will join us next time. We're going to talk about screen time, because I think up next in challenges with parenting, right behind discipline, is how to manage that screen time. So we're going to tackle that next time, and hopefully about developing habits in that area that will draw our hearts toward Jesus and toward our families. So until next time.